Hi, and welcome to welcome to another Ethical Corporation by Reuters event Responsible Business Summit series. My name is Liam Dowd, and I'm Managing Director at Ethical Corporation. I'm excited today to be joined by Satya Tripathi. Satya Tripathi is the UN Assistant Secretary General and Head of the New York office at the UN Environment Programme. Satya and I have spoken a few times over the past couple of years, and every time we speak, I'm left infused and impressed by his ability to bring like-minded companies together and associations and businesses and organizations that are looking to drive transformative change. So as we face the challenge of rebuilding a clean and inclusive economy, I think the timing is apt for Satya and I to have this conversation and go through a few questions on the impact to him and his organizations and potential ambitions and focus in the coming months. So welcome, Satya. Thank you for joining me and thank you for sparing your time. First off, I'd just like to kick off the first question to ask, how are you? How are your team? And how are you and your colleagues within the UNEP adjusting to the the COVID-19 lockdown?
Thank you, Liam. It's always a pleasure to interact with you and to share your energy in driving change forward. I think if there's one thing that we believe very strongly at the United Nations is that change is constant, and if we can't keep up with change, then we have a serious problem at hand, both for humanity and the planet. Now, in terms of how we are coping, I think we are coping all right. These are extraordinary times, and most of the colleagues are homebound, and because we are all telecommuting, except for some people in the senior leadership level, where we go to the UN headquarters off and on, myself included. But 99% of the colleagues are working from home. Some technical challenges to start with, but I think we've coped with that very well. And the colleagues have really done extremely well in not only rising to the challenge, but also using the time at hand to think differently. And that's what is very encouraging.
That is, and on the note of thinking differently, I think the time of reflection has helped us take a step back in some respects, and I suppose that quite neatly segues on into the kind of first opening question is, this time that we've had, there is a growing momentum around the idea of build back better, deliver a clean, low carbon and inclusive recovery. That's gaining momentum in a number of across the pond and a number of different entities. So what are your thoughts on this, and how are you and your colleagues within the UN helping to realize it?
And thank you. I think this is one of the most profound questions that we all have to answer moving forward. We have a tremendous opportunity because in the disaster recovery community, as you know, almost 15 years ago, I coordinated the $7 billion tsunami recovery program for the UN and 1,200 other partners working with the governments. And one of the things that we used to often say is that never let a good opportunity pass you by. And disasters, whether man-made or otherwise, often present you an opportunity to change course, to do things better, to build back better, which is something that was coined around the tsunami recovery at the time. And so what we are doing is important at three levels. One is, of course, the fact that this is a tremendous opportunity, and the COVID-19 challenge pretty much mirrors the climate challenge, whereas the COVID-19 challenge is fast and swift and unforgiving to those that refuse to heed the signs. It's no different for climate change. For a while, for several decades now, it has been slowly unfolding, but over the next decade, it will unfold very fast, much faster than what we have seen before. And this gives us a time to pause, to rethink our strategies and do things very differently. I mean, we have a tremendous opportunity. Come to think of it, last year, the world had utilized 43 gigatons of carbon from its 2,900 gigaton carbon budget. This year, my hope is that by the end of the year, given how things are progressing so far, we might be possibly at about 25 gigatons at the end of the year. That will be phenomenal. We've never done that in the several decades since when climate change conversation has been in vogue. And so that gives us a tremendous opportunity to rethink the business systems. Do we really need to meet physically to do our meetings? Can digital convening be the norm moving forward? Because that will reduce carbon emissions in a significant way. And that's what we are doing. That's the first thing. Second is that we need to work together as one community across the planet. And the UN Secretary General has recently issued, of course, that's for the UN system, but to make sure that the UN system works together across 5 different pillars to drive a post-COVID-19 socioeconomic recovery. So it's anchored in sustainability, is anchored in treating healthcare waste properly so that we don't accentuate an already serious problem. It's anchored around responding to the challenge of looking after our most vulnerable communities effectively, because they are, as data sets after data sets are showing us across the world, that the vulnerable communities, the less privileged, are bearing the brunt of the COVID-19 crisis, and they will also bear the brunt of the climate crisis. And then lastly, to work together as one world community, not just segment after segment like governments or corporations or people or civil society, but all of us working together towards one common goal of sustainability, of doing things much better and not wasting resources as we have in the century past.
Yeah, yeah, and you talk there to the the potential reductions that we're going to see in greenhouse gas emissions, and it's when trying to, I suppose, fathom that reduction, and that, I suppose, that scale. Some projections are around 8% now. That might be they might fall by 8% this year, and we need around that mark every year to stay within the limit that we the 1.5 limit. So it kind of gives I suppose insight into the kind of transformation and the change and the complete change of approach that we need to see to help to ensure that we realize that ambition ahead. And you kind of you touched upon the point there around the collaboration part and the real ambition, and I suppose some of the unforeseen collaborations that we're seeing right now. And we need that to continue as we come out of the pandemic and we look to tackle the climate crisis. So from your perspective, how can we ensure that is taken forward? You've been central to convening on many kind of transformative collaborations. So from your opinion, from your past experiences, how can we ensure that sticks, that collaborative, joined up, ambitious approach remains when we're looking to the climate crisis?
Absolutely, Liam. You see, the COVID-19 pandemic presents us with a tremendous opportunity, not without any suffering, of course. It comes with great suffering for humankind, but at the same time, the suffering is already happening. That's not of our making. That happened, unfortunately, but it also presents us a tremendous opportunity to learn from the pandemic as to how people are responding to the pandemic in their own unique ways. The climate change problem is not created by one country or one continent or one community or one corporation. It's a problem that is shared, maybe unequally, by roughly 8 billion people on the planet, and our needs and wants and how they are met. So it is individuals that will have to rise to the challenge and to see the opportunities that the learning opportunities that the COVID-19 pandemic presents to us, and see how we can take this forward in our own lives, be it as a common citizen of the world, or as the CEO of a powerful corporation, or the head of state of some of the most powerful governments in the world. We just have to see everything in a new light, and a change of attitude is not easy, but if you change behavior over a period of time, that results in change of attitude, as we know. And so let's start changing behavior in everything we do. Let's rethink every business model, and every bit of consumption and production that goes with it, and that will change things. And we cannot miss this opportunity. I cannot emphasize more how significant this opportunity is for humanity and the planet.
Yes, yeah, and on in terms of not missing the opportunity that we have, what are yourself, but and your team within the UN, what are you doing now, and what will you be doing, and what will you be pushing over the coming weeks to help galvanise and ensure that the action and the momentum is kind of ramped up and increased?
Well, the Secretary General is reaching out to heads of states. In my own organization, our Executive Director, Inger Anderson, is reaching out to key actors in government, civil society, and corporations to highlight the fact that we have a significant opportunity. And while a good talk about policy and normative issues is extremely important, but ultimately it must all result in meaningful action. I think in the climate space especially, we've had a lot of conversation about norms, and we'll keep talking, that's important. But at the same time, we have seen little action. And that's what this is all about, because at the end of it, it needs to result in meaningful action and even more meaningful results, because without that, we are all doomed.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose meaningful action, and this might have to be our last question because unfortunately we have only the 15-minute slot. But talking to that, and there's a number of companies, a number of business leaders that will be listening in, watching this interview, and they'll be looking to take meaningful action, and obviously be maybe looking to partner or collaborate with the UN environment on particular projects or particular ambitions. So what would your advice be to them? Where is your focus? Where's your ambition? How can they get your attention to have that collaborative action?
I think the most important thing that I would like to share is, and I've seen this over the years as something really transformative, is to build virtuous partnerships. Don't look at your bottom line alone. It cannot be shareholder value. It has to be stakeholder value, because without that, we internalize profits and externalize losses, and the losses are of such tremendous significance to the planet in an adverse way that we're not going to make much profits if we don't have a planet to share. And I think that's what is crucial to understand, that we will either perform together and prosper together, or we will not perform together and will perish together. And that's not a very encouraging thought for anyone in your audience. And I would strongly urge them to look at every possibility of working with stakeholders, the civil society, the vulnerable communities. Yes, we may not make a 15% return on investment, maybe we'll make a 5% return on investment. But look at what is the return on social investment? What is the return on environmental investment? What is the return on rebuilding and regenerating our ecological infrastructure on which the financial infrastructure stands? Because without the ecological infrastructure coming back to life, all the financial models that we have built over the decades will be meaningless by 2030, in another 10 years' time. And that's how significant the risk is. And I sincerely hope that people see the risk for how existential it is and do everything within their power to build virtuous partnerships where everybody comes together, mitigate the risks, because risks surmount when the partnerships don't exist. Then everyone is for themselves. When everybody comes together, whether it's an aggregator, whether it's a producer, whether it is a buyer, whether it's a consumer, when we have shared interests and shared values, we'll all prosper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you. And well, we're 30 seconds within the time limit we've been set, but yes, I echo that, and I echo that sentiment to look beyond the financial and the standard metrics of business success. We need to think of what understand the value of values, and I think there's going to be some interesting work.
We need to redefine success.
That's it. That's correct.
When we talk about value proposition, we need to understand that we must follow something called a proposition of values. We just need to turn that around from a value proposition to a proposition of values, because that's what will save humanity and all the species in this beautiful planet of ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya. And our time is up, and I do appreciate you taking the time for sharing your thoughts. Your impassioned work is very much needed. So I look forward to seeing how that develops over the coming weeks and months. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.